Welcome back to the Stock Report, where we take a look at this past week's performances in college football and we see who helped their stock, who hurt their stock. What's crack-a-lacking? It's your boy Broshmo. Just in case you did not know, so go ahead, become a bro and subscribe. Leave this video a thumbs up. You enjoy the content as always. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's have that nice, beautiful football discourse. And let's go ahead and start with the game we did with the watch along. Quentin Johnston had the breakout game this year. Already knew this guy was a phenomenal prospect, but he came out against Kansas. It was a one-man wrecking crew. He was targeted 17 times by Max Duggan, and he produced. He needed this game in a wide receiver class where there's so many questions, where we're looking at like Jackson Smith and Njigba being hampered by the hamstring issue, not being able to play. Kayshon Boutte not being a prime target on the offense. We need receivers to emerge, and he emerged this week. We know what he can do from a physical standpoint. Like, this guy's 6'4", 205, 201 to 215. It's kind of weird where he's listed at. Depends on what sources you decide to take. But had a banger performance, 14 catches, 206 yards. He had a tutty, and he had 4 forced missed tackles. This guy was so hard to bring down after the catch. He would absorb contact almost immediately after the catch, spin off, and then able to carry guys for extra yards. This is what we wanted to see from Quentin Johnston for so long. He just wasn't a real focal point in the offense this year, and to be fair, in that Sonny Dykes offensive scheme, they really spread the ball around. You're dealing with a lot of different potential weapons, and he's just the type of receiver that kind of draws attention. But it was so good to see him come out and just perform so well. We really needed a performance like this for this wide receiver class, and hopefully he can keep it up as the year goes on. Because, man, this wide receiver class is looking like, maybe I'll look on day 2 or day 3 for a wide receiver. The dude, again, was fantastic. You love this guy at the catch point. The one down thing I will say about him is on the interception, I think it was before half, by Max Duggan. He wasn't aware that the safety was there floating over the top with him. He thought he had a walk-in touchdown, and we know what he is at the catch point. He is a very, very good receiver at the catch point, so it would have been nice to see him just go up and get it. And you kind of got to know, like, this was like a 2-minute offense. The half was coming. You got to understand that these guys are going to be playing a little bit further back in defense. So, of course, there's going to be someone over the top. So, you need to go out and contend that. Wasn't a bad pass by Duggan. Some people in my comment section, because we did the watch along on that, were like, oh, it was underthrown. I was like, no, that was definitely a pass he needed to go up and contend for. But other than that, it was a stellar performance. Keep in mind, this guy has 10 forced missed tackles on the year on just 26 catches. You love it. And, like, he's got that size where it's like, yeah, this is our ex-wide receiver. So, good performance by Johnston. Now we're going to go to the defensive end to Toi Piloto. If you're like, wow, that name sounds a wee bit familiar, then it should, because Toi Piloto, his brother plays in the NFL. I think he's still with the Eagles, Marlon. But this cat's probably going to get drafted earlier than his brother. His brother went on the 6th round, I think. But Tully had one heck of a game this past weekend against Washington State. Just wreaked havoc in the backfield, 4 pressures, 3 sacks. Dude was an utter monster. And if you're not familiar with Toi Piloto, he's got a unique kind of build, because he does play on the outside there for USC, but they do kick him inside quite a lot. Like, typically, if you were going to say this year what the snap share looks like, I would say like 60% of the time he's working on the edge, and then the other 40% he's inside of the tackle. And it's kind of wild, because, like, And I talked about how like he's got an NFL pedigree. He's actually Hufanga, the safety, who's going off for the Niners this year. That's his cousin. Like this guy has like NFL pedigree. People in his family played in the NFL. And he's just like at his size, he's got the quicks. He's got the ability to win with leverage on the outside as a pass rusher. And honestly, it should translate well. Especially if he moves more inside when it comes to the NFL, because you look at his size and it's like, yeah, I don't. It's not like he's a bendy dude, and so you're probably gonna kick this guy to the interior when you get to the NFL. And this dude shows very strong hands. He's got a 6 spin move. Like this dude's a penetrator through and through when it comes to the NFL. You could say he's a bit of a tweener, but honestly, his size is much better than probably many of the other tweeners in this class. When you look at like Kobe Wooden from Auburn or Kalijah Cansey from Pittsburgh, he's just got better size than those guys, so he's probably going to go earlier. Doesn't really have the desired length to stay on the outside. I would say ideally this guy's like a 3-4 end, but I think he can make it work from the interior. We've seen the NFL kind of like really like dig guys like that. Like Logan Hall went, wasn't he like the first pick of the second round? He was up there. Like, but I think Toli Piloto is a dude we're gonna see on day 2. So very, very, very hyped for this guy. Had a banger game. He's put it on a great season. He's already matched his sack total from last season. So looking good, my friend. That USC defense is kind of scary, kind of good. Now, next, I want to go stick with the defensive side and talk about Brian Branch, who returned healthy this week, which was good. He what was it? Back at the Arkansas game, he got hurt in the first half, but played this game, played 72 snaps against A&M, and looked great. Majority of his snaps did come in the slot. A majority of the time he is playing in the slot this year, but I think this dude could cut it at safety. But he's one of the most sure tacklers ever. Like for a slot / safety hybrid, like that's just kind of him, man. Like over the course of his career, he has a 1.8% missed tackle rate this year. He's got a 3.2%. So like, yeah, no, like I think there's a case to be made where Brian Branch should be up there in who's safety 1. Because like Antonio Johnson, he decided to, like, a guy that got banged up last week decided, nah, screw it, I'm gonna go play, and he's playing particularly well as well. But I don't think he might have a better physical build than Branch, but he's not the athlete that Branch is, and Branch is this sure tackler. And as you can tell, dude had 9 tackles in the ball game, had 2 pass breakups. He was targeted 7 times, only allowed 4 receptions, 431 yards. The dude is really good. He plays with this fearless play style. Like whether it's like in the run game or the pass game, this dude wants to make a big play every play. You've seen the ball skills over the course of his career: 2 interceptions, 12 pass breakups over the course of his career, and that's like 1,200 career snaps. Dude is just exceptionally good, very good. He looked really good this week. I don't think it's gonna be too much of a knock that majority of his snaps are in the slot, because he's played a safety a ton for Alabama. I think he's got a versatile enough skill set to where he could probably stick it with that in the NFL. He does have a bit of a high risk, high reward type of mentality, and sometimes he'll find himself out of position early and having to play catch up, but he kind of has the ability to play catch up. I think this is kind of like a more grounded, like Andre Cisco. If you weren't here for that draft, I really loved Andre Cisco. It was just like his blown coverages back at Syracuse were exceptionally detrimental to Syracuse, and you just don't see that. You see Brian Branch, while he can be a bit too aggressive, he doesn't take himself so much out of the play that it's gonna be this like big gain for the the defense. And this year, I think he's just taken it to another level in coverage where guys typically they're not really throwing his way. He's only allowed 12 receptions, 468 yards. So huge fan. Good for you, Brian Branch. It's really good. I think it's a much hotter debate than people are making it out to be. Who's safety 1, who's safety 2, because really, man, he has done exceptionally well this year. Him and Antonio Johnson. I think however you feel about them, it's fine. Like, both are really, really good. Whoever is your cup of tea, then that's your cup of tea. Now, this is a returning prospect, Xavier Thomas from Clemson, like returning from injury, who had, it was limited, very limited snaps. He only played 6 snaps, but 4 pressures and 2 sacks. And I know Boston College's offensive line is exceptionally inexperienced. They lost like 4 stars to the NFL last year, and then they lost their only other starter at the beginning, right before the season, in Christian Montgomery. But still, like this, the Clemson defensive line wreaked havoc in general. Like, I also thought about talking about who's the other cat? What is it? KJ Henry here. But I figure not a lot of people are really talking about Xavier Thomas because, like, he was once thought to be like this guy that's going to absolutely be a first rounder, and things just didn't happen that way because of some like unfortunate circumstances at some point. Like former 5-star recruit from the 2018 class, he played a rotational role in 2018 where he saw 318 snaps, so he was able to see the field on a very good defensive line for Clemson despite only being a freshman. He became the starter in 2019, and where he, like, his stats were similar despite the uptick in snaps, where it was like, okay, that's a bit alarming. And then 2020 just wasn't it for him. He struggled with the Rona, ended up getting strep throat, and eventually just decided, hey, I'm gonna just redshirt 2020. It's kind of been a mess for me. He then enjoyed a much better breakout season in 2021, and I feel like he came back this season kind of reassured, like, hey, I can be this day 2 prospect. I don't think we're going to ever be talking about him in day 1 again. Then again, though, this was a very hot start. Let's see how he looks the rest of the season. But if you didn't know, also, he started the year out. He had foot surgery in August, so he had to work his way back, and I imagine we're going to see a lot more snaps from him in the next coming weeks. But the dude's got a great build, 6'2", 270. Like, he has ideal length, he has power, he has explosiveness. That all translates to the NFL well. The short area quicks are good. He's got strong hands, and he's just a tough matchup for any blocker, whether you're on the outside or the interior. Like, the dude moves well laterally. He pulls down blockers to get to ball carriers. Like you look back at his tape and it's like, man, this is a quality player here, very quality. However, like, he is playing a bit out of position there at Clemson, where they play 3-man fronts typically, so he's kind of playing inside of the tackle quite a bit, and he's typically lining like inside 4 tech, and you would expect with his, like, and this is the thing where people stalled on him was from that 2018-2019 season, where it's like, with his size and power, you expect a bigger leap in development. And then in 2021, you were like, okay, this is kind of what he should have looked like, but can I still trust that? And, like, in all honesty, like, still he I would say, and it's really hard. We saw 6 snaps. So it's really hard to say, okay, maybe he is a bit more defined as a pass rusher this season. Again, we need a larger sample size over this season. But based on what we saw him put on tape in 2021, that is an area he still needs to get better at. He doesn't really have a ton of moves. He's not really polished in that regard, doesn't play with a lot of technique. He really needs to work on how and where he places his hands. So someone to watch out for in this edge class, I think could sneak into the day 2 talk. Honestly, him and KJ Henry, and like, I'm like looking at Miles Murphy, right? And it's like, dude, this guy's making everyone's job around him, and Brian Brazier are making everyone else's job around them so much easier as these other guys are starting to take off and get one-on-ones and just utterly annihilate those one-on-ones. So good on Xavier Thomas. I just want to bring him up because I feel like he's an often forgotten about prospect. And then we talked a lot about a lot of good. Let's talk about a down this week in Luke Haggard out of Indiana, as Indiana took on. Here, let me pull it up. Michigan. Duh, stupid. That's a tough contest. Didn't have an ideal outing, like 4 pressures and 2 sacks allowed on 60 pass rushing snaps or pass blocking snaps. That's not terrible, but you look at this cat and it's like, you know what? Yeah, he's probably gonna be a day 3 guy. He's not this sleeper as people think. Guys like coming into the year, guys like the Syracuse tackle Matthew, it's like Bergeron or something. Like Robert Scott was thought to be this under the radar guy that could go much earlier. Darnell Wright from Tennessee. Like some people sometimes threw Haggard or Javon Foster from Mizzou. Like they threw Haggard in there, and I don't think that was really fair. Like he had a solid year last year for Indiana, but I think this is more grounded to earth of what he's gonna be in the NFL. So I think he's gonna be this like 4th, 5th, maybe even 6th round. I would say 4th or 5th round pick when it comes to the NFL. Mid-day 3 feels like the safest. But if you're not familiar with Haggard, he spent 2 seasons at Santa Rosa Junior College and ended up being a 3-star JUCO in the 2020 recruiting class. He landed with Indiana, made 4 starts at left tackle in the shortened season there in 2020. Missed the season opener in 2021 with an injury, but started the rest of the season at left tackle. He is probably going to be, I think he's going to be 23 around the time of the draft. So a bit of an older prospect, but when you're looking at these day 3, you really don't care too much about the age. You just want good football players, and I think that's what he is. Like, I feel like he's kind of peaking at the right time. Like, this guy has good length. He has good athleticism, very light on his feet, looks natural in his like an outside zone blocking scheme, which a lot of the NFL loves to run now. And he's really just at his best when on the move as a pass protector. I think he's capable of mirroring guys. He does a good job of staying on balance and resetting his anchor when he has to, resetting his hands when he has to. The dude, he struggles from the tall tackle problem. When you're that high, when you're that high off the ground, you're going to struggle with sinking down and getting good leverage. You just don't have natural leverage at that size. You could make a case for him for adding strength to his frame, because there are times his anchor can be a bit inconsistent. He struggled to move the line on like gap and power blocking concepts. And honestly, could use his hands a bit better, but a guy that's only been playing at least Power 5 football. Granted, it's been over, I guess you would say at this point, it's like he's had almost like 1,500 snaps in Power 5 football, but a guy that is playing with this chip on his shoulder, being a former JUCO guy. But like he's taken on, when you've looked at him going one-on-one with other NFL prospects, like this is now going back to like 2021, there were times where he struggled with guys like Boye Mafe, Myjah Sanders. So this year he really didn't have that yet until this game against Michigan, and it just wasn't all pretty all the time, and that's fine. For what he is, like this early to mid day 3 guy, I think he's a fine tackle. Indiana's they got some fun prospects on that roster. Maybe we'll talk about like a Cam Jones sometime in the future. But I came away ultimately like, yeah, this is exactly who I thought he was. So yeah, this is a cat I actually talked about at the beginning of the year. Literally the first process stock report, he was in it, and it's Israel. Let's see if I got the pronunciation down. I do. Aban Ikenda. I'm gonna call him Israel. Anywho, Yo, those aren't his season stats you're looking at. He unloaded on Virginia Tech where he had 36 carries for 320 yards and 6 TDs. And to be fair, ever since the season opener against West Virginia, and that's where I was like, man, dude, this cat wasn't impressive at all. The dude's been much better since. He's had, I think, 4 of his last 5 games. He's run the ball for over 100 yards. This game, 320, kind of legit. Dude's a former 3-star recruit. Guy's got a lot of speed because he was a 2-time gold medalist in the 100 meter in high school. And the dude just accelerates so quickly through holes and out in space, and that's really where he's at his most dangerous, when he's out in space. He displays shiftiness in close quarters, and he can put linebackers legit in a blender at the second level. Also, this dude, he kind of pinballs at the second level, and that's the thing, man. This guy's really good when he gets to the second level because he doesn't really have that type of contact absorption, or absorbs contact that way around the line of scrimmage. Like, a lot of times if you could stop him in the line of scrimmage, then he ain't really gonna do anything. He's not the type of guy that can make something out of nothing. And when you look at him, at least in terms of his skills, I'd be like, oh man, this guy must be really good in the passing game. And he's just not utilized that way. Like, first things first, like in terms of drops, like over the course of his career, he's had that. So it's like, okay, where's the receiving upside? And he's not much of a pass blocker either. He does bring return experience too. Again, great speed. And I think that makes him draftable. I think this is a guy we see in late day 3, mid day 3 at this point. And I admittedly, man, at the beginning of the year, like after that first game, I was like, man, nah, forget, like, I discounted. I was like, I don't know if this would be entirely a guy that I would draft. Like, I had, I think, a late day 3 grade on him, and after this performance, honestly, after his performance the last few weeks, I've kind of bumped him up a little bit. I think we could talk about him in that top 20 running back in this class variety, but had literally an amazing game. No running back this week broke 200 yards, and this dude broke 300 yards, 326 touchdowns. Absolutely ridiculous. All right, next on the agenda, I got Kobe Turner out of Wake Forest. They had Army this week, and you'd be like, okay, well, this is a guy playing at a Power 5 school. He should play Army pretty well. But the dude's been playing well all this season. It's just now that this is when I really get a chance to actually talk about him. Now, he's very interesting because he was an unranked recruit out of the 2017 class. So I anticipate him to be like this maybe 23 to 24-year-old. But his brother plays at South Carolina. I think he's a DB there. Not positive. Don't quote me on it. But as a freshman, he redshirted for the Richmond Spiders. That's right. Back in Virginia, Richmond. But he redshirted his freshman season, and then in 2018 he played a rotational role there. And then in 2019 he started all 12 games, was third team all CAA. In 2020 they played the spring season. They had the fall season canceled, but they played in the spring. He finished as a first team all CAA. He was also CAA co-defensive player of the year. 2021, guess what? Went ahead, did it again, finished first team all CAA. Then he grad transferred over to Wake Forest, and he has been exceptional since he got there. It's 6'3", 290. It's like, you think he'd like at that size you'd need to have a bit more high end athleticism. But this dude plays exceptionally strong and tough, and he plays with nastiness. I think he's the legit best player on that Wake Forest defense. This guy's a tone setter on the defensive line, plays with violence. He's extremely strong on his lower half and just can mow blockers down. Dude has a devastating bull rush, plays with a lot of discipline, executes his assignment exceptionally well. And if you go back to what coaches said about him at Richmond, and even what coaches at Wake Forest are saying about him, the dude's a legit student of the game, man. Coaches rave about how much work he puts in the film room, on the practice field. So like, that's great to see. Now, this cat, not ideal lateral movement from all intents and purposes. This is a guy that wants to move north or south. This is a cat that doesn't necessarily have that high end, those high end traits, but he plays a lot bigger than he is. So this is a cat we could be talking about in that day, like maybe day 2 variety. Dude's just like, at the end of the day, you look at him and be like, that's a good football player. So again, it's nice to see another guy in this offensive interior class emerge. Or I said defensive interior class. He's been very, very good. All right, and then this one's a bit of a downer, I would say. It's Keontae Thompson. Hold on, let me see if I got the pronunciation for his first name down. I don't, but I'm going to call him Mr. Thompson. This dude has an interesting background because it'll kind of make sense. First off, this dude's one of the older prospects. I think he's going to be 24 when he takes his first NFL snap. Also, you'll find out he's very raw as a receiver because he was a grad transfer from Mississippi State where he played quarterback. He transferred initially and was the Wildcat quarterback for Virginia in 2020 before making the switch to receiver in 2021, where he mainly operates in the slot. Which, if you don't know, like typically when you're evaluating guys, unless they're exceptional in the slot, you look at him like, okay, this is a guy that might struggle to play on the outside. Can't play on the outside in the NFL because he gets a ton of free releases. Which there's something behind it, but it's not really the rule. It's more so kind of the standard where it's like, these slot guys or heavy utilized slot guys in college football typically get pushed down draft boards because of that. But this dude has great after the catch ability. If you go back to like 2021, he had 44 missed tackles on 117 touches. There we go. Because again, this was a guy that also he'll take like wildcat snaps or he'll lined up as a running back in the backfield. You'd be like, oh man, this guy's got insane versatility. But you do notice ball skills issues. You really do. Like the 4 drops in this game, this was all on 12 targets. So those 4 incompletions were all drops on his part in this game. On the year has 8 drops. We're looking at a 16.7 drop rate. That's nuts. Remember, at 10%, if your drop rate's 10%, huge red flag. They're flying up. Like, I don't know about this cat. I don't know. Now, here with him, with that, there's the drop rate. A guy that didn't really start playing like real receiver till 2021. So this would be the second year of receiver under his belt. Apparently, he's eligible till 2025. I don't know about that one. That's wild. When you look at his route tree, it's very simplistic. They like to use this cat on screens a lot. And you know what? I don't blame him. I really don't. Because the dude already has 16 forced missed tackles this season on 40 receptions. Kind of nutty. Kind of insane. He's really, really good at the contested catch. If you look at it over the course of his career, 21 of 38 on contested catches. That's 55.3%. Really good. So what do you do with a guy like this? You know, did you take him as a project receiver? Like, what do you do with that? And that's kind of the problem. A guy that doesn't have a great route tree struggles to catch the football. Do you really want to rock a 6'5", 216 running back? Like, no, probably not. I mean, I guess you could, like, with how good he is. But a guy that's like, are you going to worry about his pad level in the backfield? So, like, I don't know, man. This cat, he's going to be an interesting eval, just given his where he came from in terms of former quarterback, really new at the wide receiver position, ball skill problems. And I mean, to some extent, it's like you can only so much of this is like focus drops, you know? It's like when he wants to go up and play physical, like I feel like his hands are at their best when he is being contested. So I don't know, man. He's interesting as a prospect. Now, you know, I guess I've been meaning to talk about Jahmyr Gibbs. I guess recently, I know a lot of people really love Gibbs. He's kind of stood out as running back, probably elevated himself to running back 2 in this class if you hadn't already had him there. The dude's been wonderful for Alabama, and now they're really giving him the ball with Bryce Young being banged up. But dude had a really good game this week, 21 carries for 154 yards, had 3 catches in the receiving game. If you're not familiar, this guy was the former Georgia Tech prospect or Georgia Tech player, then transferred over to Bama. But like how he impacts the game is he can just get off at a moment's notice. This guy's a legit home run threat, might have the quickest feet in this class. The dude's such a fluid and explosive athlete. Really good stop-start ability. Just dangerous in space. Now, my hiccups with him is his overall contact balance when he does get stuck in close quarters, or when he does have to operate between the tackles. That's where I'm kind of like, there's better guys out there like Bijan. Like for me, you're not going to talk me off Bijan as running back 1. I feel like no one comes close. Bijan's currently leading college football in forced missed tackles. He's so hard to bring down. And some people would be like, oh, I mean, Gibbs, he's more of a home run threat. He's got more speed. I could care less. Like Bijan's just a different animal, and I think it's fine to be like, oh yeah, dude, Gibbs, he's up there, but it's like, I don't know, man. I just can't take it serious like that. Bijan wouldn't be running back 1. This isn't like Najee Harris and Travis Etienne. That's not this year. That's not it. That's not the comparison. Like Gibbs is good, but Bijan's just legit the best running back prospect, I would say, since Saquon Barkley. And if you're asking me who's a better prospect, Saquon or Bijan, it's Saquon. Saquon was like an insane athlete, like just in general. So 18 forced missed tackles on the season on 64 carries. That's pretty good. The 4 yards after contact is really good too. What he can do in the receiving game is nice. Already has over 220 yards in the receiving game. But I mean, while we're here, we could talk about Bijan and what he's doing. Also, another name, I think a guy that's kind of like in that running for running back 3 at this point, like up there with Sean Tucker, would be Blake Quorum from Michigan. He has been exceptional this season for Michigan, and I just love his contact balance. He plays with a very low center of gravity. Like he's like, what, 5'9", 5'8", 200, so just exceptional. Low center of gravity. But look at Bijan, 51 forced missed tackles already on the year, and that's only on 110 carries. Like he's averaging over almost 4.5 yards after contact. He's just stupid hard to bring down. Be like, well, what can he do in the receiving game? Okay, he's got 203 yards. He's 17 yards behind Gibbs. Have at it. Like I don't know. There's a certain point where it's just like, no, you know what? The better run, like I think the better run back is Bijan. But I think it's fair if you want to try to make that case. Quick report on like Zach Evans. I'm so unsure of. He's stuck in a running back by committee at this point with, was it Judkins? Is it Quentin Judkins? I can't remember his first name. But the Ole Miss freshman. And that cat looks legit. But like Zach Evans, man, you know what he can do it as an athlete, but he's He hasn't been that impressive this year. So where does he fall in this class? Also want to mention some of the power backs had real banger games this week. Christian Rodriguez, outside of the fumble, had an exceptionally good game. Zach Charbonnet had a wonderful game. I think he almost got over 200 yards this past weekend. So Charbonnet would be like, hey, I know this run class is stacked, but don't forget about me. Honestly, Charbonnet, you should have came out on the 2022 draft. You would have been running back 3, bro. Or at least running back 4. So, I don't know. That's kind of interesting. Now, last but not least, I want to talk about the quarterbacks in this class. And we'll talk about Hendon Hooker, but I'm also going to talk about a couple of the others in terms of just updates. So, Hendon Hooker continues to be one of the best players in college football. There! I said it. Continues to be one of the best players in college football. And I know a lot of y'all, like, some of y'all are like, man, why don't people talk about him as a first round caliber talent? Well, the dude's going to be 25 by the time he takes his first snap in the NFL. He's one of the oldest prospects in this class, and that's where Jaren Hall is in the same boat. He's another guy that's going to be 25 by the time he takes his first snap in the NFL. He just doesn't have, I would say, the tools that Hooker has. I mean, they're very polar opposite quarterbacks to an extent. Hooker originally coming from Virginia Tech, I don't even want to say revitalized, but like broke out when he decided to be like, hey, screw that place, I'm going to Tennessee. And Tennessee is back because of Hendon Hooker. He's been that good. Like, I think this dude's got a good arm strength, throws with a lot of touch down the field. Now, when I say arm strength, I'm also going to talk about his lack of zip on some throws when we get to the cons. But does have a big arm, a guy that can get the ball downfield. Like, there were a couple of plays this year where he's had like 2 or 3 guys on him, and he just flicks the wrist and the ball flies 60 yards. It's kind of nuts. But I love his touchdown field. He's got a great build that honestly he could put even more weight on if he really wants to. Great contact balance, 43 forced missed tackles back in 2021. That's kind of continued this year. Just dude's elusive. Dude's a playmaker for Tennessee. However, when you're dealing with a guy that's that old, typically you look at that and be like, how much more can you get from him at that age? Like, typically about at that age, you're like, okay, whatever their tools are, that their tools are their tools. They're not going to do much growing after that. How much more can they really fill their frame at that point? You're typically looking at that guy and be like, okay, that's what you're going to be in the NFL, opposed to guys who are young and have this upside, like CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, DJ Ungalele, guys that are young that they can build upon what they already have and continue to mature physically. Hooker just doesn't have that because he's an older guy. But what you do have with him is a guy that can throw the ball well. He can execute your offense. And he's got a really good mobility to him. A guy that, honestly, like, I think he's going to be in the day 2 conversation. Where he struggles underneath, his accuracy has been better this year, but that is something he struggles with, his accuracy underneath. Typically underneath, he throws exceptionally hard. It's about the only time you see zip on those underneath passes because they come out flying. But you don't see that on the sideline where he could zip a ball to the sideline and put it where only his receiver can get it. Sometimes the balls kind of sail on him, and I think that's more of a mechanics thing where he, instead of relying so much on his arm, he could get more hip rotation into that. So there's that. I talk about how you could get the ball downfield, but it sails on him. So, like, can he be a guy that could throw it on a rope downfield? I don't know, man. That's something that really, like, needs to work on his mechanics. And there's that. I think this year he's done a better job of not being so early bird out the pocket, like maybe waiting for his receivers, maybe go through a couple of progressions before he decides to pick it up and run with it. And the real worrisome thing when it comes to him just taking the ball and running with it, like through like 30 something games, he has like close to 20 fumbles. So it's like a guy that literally just had 2 fumbles this past weekend against LSU. But that's not to take away for what he is as a college football player at this point and what he can be as a prospect. You just got to understand he got a real bad expectation. That's why people really don't view him as a first rounder. And with Jaron Hall, with the guy who just struggled mightily this week, not mightily, but against a really good Notre Dame defense, a dude that doesn't have the height of Hooker, who had problems making reads over the middle of the field. And part of that, you could be like, oh man, he's having trouble seeing over his offensive line and such. Though the touch on his passes, like, this is a good thrower of the football, and I think he's gotten better over the middle of the field. Though, of course, his best throws are definitely towards the sidelines, outside the hash. It's just beautiful. But a cat that's been honestly taking a BYU team that's not exceptionally talented and making them like competitors. So like Jaron Hall, I think, is up there with Hooker, especially if you're like, if you don't get those, like, depending on who emerges in this class, like you got obviously Young, you got Stroud. I think DJ Uyunglele is going to be that other guy. But then you have a toolsy dude like Anthony Richardson. You have Tanner McKee, who's, it sucks that he doesn't have talent around him, but he's doing the best he can, and honestly, it's not that bad. You have Will Levis, who decision making, and by the way, wearing a boot this week, did play against South Carolina. They end up losing, so don't know why. Like, really felt like there was no indication coming into this game that he wasn't going to be available. So that was kind of wild to see, something to monitor. But after you get past those guys, right, then who's the next quarterback up? Because other guys, I don't think, really emerged. Like, I don't think there's those other guys in this class. So I think you maybe look at these 2 older prospects that be like, you know what? These guys could be maybe like solid starters, but if anything, high-end backups in the NFL, you'd be willing to take that maybe in the 3rd round. So that's kind of what I think. I will say this: if you're gonna make the case for Stroud right now over Young, because I'm typically like, hey, it's kind of 1A, 1B, but I really love Young a lot. I love this guy's just kind of very Mahomes-like in the pocket. Probably the best thrower over the middle of the field. I think Stroud, in terms of like how far apart they were to me, Stroud has legit not just closed the distance, but like people are gonna have concerns about, if you have concerns about Young's height, then absolutely it's a no-brainer. Stroud's your guy. Like I think there's a case that Stroud should be quarterback 1 in this class if you do have those concerns about Young. So like Stroud's just been amazing this year. So yeah, I don't know when it comes to my prospect rankings who I'll have first, but it's gonna be a little bit interesting. But that's it for the video. Go ahead, do the YouTube thing. I think I covered quite a bit in this video. Let me know other guys you thought had really good weeks. By the way, Clark Phillips, he had another pick 6 this week. Manuel Forbes continues to be super impressive. So yeah. Corner, I really think the corner class is starting to look really good. But yeah, that's it for the video. Do the YouTube thing. As always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.